logic, logic, logic. So, you want to learn about the word logic? Well, let me tell you, it's a really interesting one. Logically speaking, pun intended, logic is a noun, and its part of speech can be either singular or plural, but usually, we use the singular form. In common usage, people talk about logic as the ability to think clearly and make sound judgments based on reason and evidence. It's that moment when you analyze information, identify patterns, and draw conclusions without getting too emotional or swayed by personal opinions. Think of it like a step-by-step process. Observe, deduce, and conclude, all while keeping your thinking sharp and objective. One special note is that logic can also refer to the study of reasoning itself, which is why you might see phrases like logical argument or logical fallacy. And, funnily enough, some people use the word logic in a more casual way, implying something is reasonable or makes sense, even if it's not always strictly logical. Here are 3 practical example sentences using the word logic with different usage and context. In a formal lecture on critical thinking, the professor explained to her students that sound logic is essential in resolving moral dilemmas, as it allows us to evaluate evidence objectively and make informed decisions. This sentence showcases the word logic in an academic setting where clear reasoning and analysis are crucial. During a casual conversation with a friend who's struggling to understand why someone wouldn't want to go out on a Friday night, you might say, "I know you're excited, but think about it, if we don't get tickets online, they'll probably sell out quickly. So there's some logic in not getting our hopes up." This sentence demonstrates the word logic in everyday conversation where common sense and reasoning are used to make decisions. In a business meeting discussing marketing strategies, an executive might say, based on our analysis of customer behavior, I think we should adjust our campaign schedule to coincide with major events. Which makes logical sense given the increased foot traffic during those times. This sentence highlights the word logic in a professional context where data-driven decisions and sound reasoning are used to inform business strategies. So, you're trying to figure out what logic means. Well, think of it this way. Logic is a way of thinking that helps us make sense of things by using rules and patterns to understand how the world works. It's like having a set of guidelines in your head that says, if A happens, then B will probably happen too. This helps us reason and come to conclusions based on what we know. And it's super useful for solving problems, making decisions, and even just understanding how things fit together. Margin, margin, margin. Let's talk about the word margin. So, margin is a noun, which means it refers to a specific thing. In this case, a small amount of something. In common usage, you'll often hear or see margin used in business or financial contexts, like when a company has a small profit or loss. For example, the company's sales have increased by 10%, but their profit margin is still slim. It can also be used in other areas, such as sports, where a team might have a small lead or advantage over their opponents. What's interesting about margin is that it can imply a sense of uncertainty or lack of security, especially when referring to something like a financial situation. So you might hear someone say, "I'm not sure how I'll make ends meet on my current salary," with such a thin margin between income and expenses. Here are 3 practical example sentences using the word margin with varying levels of formality. In a formal tone, I might say that the university's decision to increase tuition fees by 10% this year was within their margin of acceptable financial planning, taking into account the recent government budget cuts. This sentence uses the word margin in an academic or business context, implying a range or limit of acceptable variation. When chatting with friends over coffee, I might say that we've got a bit of margin to squeeze in one more drink before meeting up with Sarah at 8 p.m. I'm not sure if we'll make it, but let's hope so. In this casual conversation, the word margin implies a buffer or spare time to do something. In a business setting, our marketing team is trying to negotiate a better price for the upcoming advertising campaign and are seeking a margin of at least 5% on all print ads sold within the next quarter. Anything less would be unacceptable. This sentence uses the word margin in a commercial context, implying a specific percentage or rate of profit or discount. So you want to learn about a word that refers to the extra space or amount of something that is allowed or available in a situation, right? Think of it like this. When you're planning a trip and your flight gets delayed by an hour, but you still have some time left before your next meeting, that's kind of like having a buffer. It's the space between two things, where one is just enough to fit in without being too much or too little. Mainly, it's used to describe the extra amount or space that allows something to happen or be done without causing any problems. For example, if you're building a house and need some extra room for a garden, but can only use up to 10% of your total yard, that would be an example of this concept. In business or planning, it's often used to describe the amount of resources or time that's left over after all other necessities are taken care of. Some similar ideas that might come to mind when thinking about this word include buffer, as I mentioned earlier, spare, or even just plain old extra, like having some extra money in your pocket for a rainy day. Medical. 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 As we explore the world of English vocabulary together, let's take a closer look at the word medical. The part of speech for medical is an adjective, which means it modifies or describes a noun, often indicating something related to healthcare or medicine. In common usage, you'll typically see medical used to describe people, organizations, procedures, or equipment that are associated with healing and healthcare, such as a medical doctor, a medical facility, or a medical test. One special note about the usage of medical is that it can sometimes be confused with a noun. But in most cases, it's an adjective. Just remember that it usually precedes a noun to describe its properties. In a formal setting, such as a hospital or medical conference, you might say, the patient's medical history revealed a previous condition that had gone undiagnosed for several years. This sentence is suitable for a professional context where precision and objectivity are required. On the other hand, in a casual conversation with a friend who has just returned from the doctor, you could say, "Dude, I'm so glad everything came out medical, that's a huge relief." Here, the tone is relaxed and conversational, allowing for a bit of slang and colloquialism. In a business or academic setting, such as a research paper or company report, you might write, "Our company has implemented several medical technology innovations to improve patient care and streamline healthcare services." This sentence combines formality with technical vocabulary, making it suitable for professional or scholarly purposes. So you're trying to learn about this concept that deals with people's health and well-being? Let me help explain. This field is all about taking care of our bodies when we get hurt or feel unwell. It's like having a special kind of attention from experts who can diagnose what's going on and fix the problem. They use things like equipment, procedures, and sometimes even medicines to make us better. It's not just about getting sick or injured, but also about preventing problems before they happen, which is why it often involves regular checkups and healthy habits.